welcome to my first installment of Holiday Fridays for 2018. Today we're going to be using the Christmas Magic stamp set and matching dies from Avery Elle. This was brand new this season for 2008. It was too cute, I couldn't resist. I love unicorn and Christmas. I'm also going to use the My Favorite Things square shaker dies and pouches to help pull together my little look here. I'm going to be doing some alcohol marker coloring, so I'll be stamping using the Extreme Black ink on my Spectrum Noir cardstock. I am making multiples of this card, and you'll notice in a couple different colorways from the coloring, so you might see different variations of the coloring depending on which part of the process we're in. They were all the same card, the same concept. I just chose to color some of them differently than others because I was experimenting with color. And then they were already colored, so I put them to good use and turned them into cards. I'm making multiples because I'm also making some of my personal Christmas cards at the same time. So we're just going to stamp that out. And then we're going to select the markers. I selected some medium bright shades. I'm going to keep the main bodies of the unicorn and the snowman white because I think it's going to look nice with the bright white background of the card. So we're just going to start by just giving them a tiny little bit of shading using a really light gray marker, and then I'm going to blend it out. My blending marker, my colorless blender, is a Copic marker. It's one of the few Copics that I own. My colorless blender for my Spectrum Noir ran out of ink, and then I was not able to replace it in a timely and cost-effective fashion. So I decided for less money I could replace the marker entirely with a Copic, and I can access the Copic colorless blender refills a lot easier. I just grab them from Scrapbook Pal. And I order from them several times a month, so if I needed more refills, then it was a lot easier. And you can see there on the left my different piles. Having a stamp positioner is so easy when you're making multiples. I just rotated the paper, stamped it, grabbed another sheet. I'm using the unicorn and the little snowman, but not the street lamp. I do have plans to make a different kind of card using the street lamp, but not for this one. This one we're going to do a 2-window shaker card. So I wanted just 2 little figures to go in there. So I'm just putting some final color details. I did obviously cut out a good chunk of my coloring. It's a little bit redundant, and I'm not a very great colorist anyway, so you're not really going to be learning anything from me. Most of what I do is just 2 color blends, 3 color blends at most, but on this particular card it was just 2 color blends. Sort of added a little bit of shine and festiveness. I took out my Spectrum Noir shimmer pen, the clear shimmer pen, and just colored the white parts of my little characters with some shimmer so that it would shine. The card is going to be very shiny without being overly glittery, and I like that. So once I got them all colored and shined up with the shimmer pen, I'm going to die cut them, and I'm using my trusty old dying cuddle bug to do that. It's I don't know if you can see underneath my pads there, I've got a couple of different shims. These are real simple dies though, so I didn't anticipate and did not have any problems getting them to run through. I use washi tape right now to hold my dies in place, and I just press it first into the palm of my hand so that the oils from my hand help take away some of the stick. This particular washi tape that I'm using right now tends to rip up the paper. So I'm being careful to take away some of the stick and to not put the washi tape on the actual images. I'm putting it on the border of the die and then on the outside of the die. Excuse me. They're really cute. So I die cut all the different sets that I had done at once and just kind of made cute little piles of them off screen. There we go. There's some unicorns and some snowmen. Very cute. A couple of different colorways on those. So my next step is I'm going to start working on part of the shaker. And I want 2 different square windows on the front of my card. So this is one way. I'll show you the second way that I did these as well. One way it was to make a light pencil mark and mark it off before I ran it through the die cut machine, just to kind of make sure that both were going to fit. It's a bit of a tight squeeze with both squares on that front. I just wanted to make sure that they both would fit on there. And pretty much once I did this once and kind of eyeballed it and eyeballed how it was going to get pulled together, I was able to do it without the pencil marks afterwards. And I wasn't worried about those pencil marks. They will get covered with the border of the square that the My Favorite Things die, the second die, is for. So I wasn't too worried about making pencil. But this first one that you're seeing is actually the first time that I sent one through with this. And this was kind of my my prototype. And I continue to use this one as my prototype / sample card because this is the first time that I had done this design. So this was the one that I did all the experimenting with. And the final product is not as nice as the other cards that went through. So I have this lovely sort of sea spray green paper here. And I'm using the second die that comes from the shaker set. And that's going to make a border that you can glue around the opening, just for a little bit more of a pop of color. And I'll set those aside into a pile to keep them safe and all together. And inevitably, what always happens is you still lose one anyway. So I think I actually had to come back at some point during the process and cut another one. I'm not really sure what I'm doing off camera or why I didn't cut this part of the footage out, but I do apologize. I don't like a lot of empty space. Here I am with another panel, and I'm just going to try to eyeball it the second time. And I'm not, I'm trying to be precise, but I'm not worried if things aren't perfect. So I saw with the first one that I did and kind of lined it up with the borders that the squares were going to be a little bit too close together. So the second time I eyeballed it and just kind of positioned them a little bit further apart. And then I end up cutting all of the other front panels for my shaker cards the same way. And I won't show that. I just wanted to show you the both ways that I cut those. So we're going to be working on the back part of the shaker, the actual background part that the unicorn and the snowman are going to be glued to. And I wanted to have a nice, fun winter scene in the background. So again, this is my sample, my victim, my prototype, my guinea pig card that I'm working on. And I'm just kind of making little pencil tick marks to kind of remind me where the space is that's going to show on the completed card. And actually I had to do that for all of the cards because I cut out the squares freehand basically. They all were in slightly different positions, so there was no one template that I could use for that. So it was like an individual thing, which was fine. So I'm going to do some ink blending, Distress Oxide blending in the background, but I want to do some stamping for a resist technique for a couple of little snowflakes from that set, so that there are some snowflakes in the background of my little characters. So I'm going to be using my Versamark ink, and I've put the two little snowflakes on my stamp platform, and I'm kind of placing them and white heat embossing them with the Wow white embossing powder right in those square areas where I know was going to show the little characters through the window boxes that I'm making for them. And then I'm going on and moving on to the second one. Like I said, because I freehand placed all the squares, they're all in slightly different positions, so I thought it was best to take the time to do each card right instead of have a couple that were off and then have to go back and redo the whole thing. And like I said in the beginning, I think I was watching Downton Abbey as I was doing this, so I really was not in a hurry. I was just very casually kind of having fun with this project. So I'm going to use some Distress Oxide ink to do my color background. And this ink is going to pick up a lot of the seafoam green. I'm using Peacock Feathers, the Distress Oxide ink. It's going to pick up some of that seafoam green that I'm going to be using for the borders and actually the matting behind my card as well. We'll see in a little bit. But I didn't put a very heavy layer on because I wanted it to be a little bit lighter than the cardstock, and I wanted it to look kind of ombre a little bit. And I'm just inking, very simple inking, making sure that I'm encompassing that area that I've penciled off that I know will show, just to have a little color in the background. And then I'm taking a paper towel and just wiping it right over the heat embossing to get some of the ink off of the white. And the next step in assembling the card is I'm going to work on the front panel. I'm going to stamp the sentiment, "Believe in the Magic of Christmas," and I'm going to stamp that in black because I really wanted it to stick out and be bold. And I think I used the same extreme black ink from My Favorite Things because that's what I had on hand. Something like your VersaFine Onyx Black would work just fine here as well. Just something really crisp and nice. And I went through and I stamped all of them. Hopefully I don't show you all of them. I think I cut that footage out. But I'm not quite done with the front. I wanted it to be mostly white, but I wanted it to have a little bit extra fun to it. So I'm going to do some more heat embossing and some stamping. So I'm taking those small little stamps that came with the kit. I'm taking one of the little stamps and I'm going to heat emboss a couple of silver snowflakes onto the front of the card. Just a couple, 2 or 3 maybe. And I'm using the Hero Arts Silver Sparkle Embossing Powder that we got in a kit earlier this year. I want to say it was the January kit. I could be wrong. I think it might be the January kit. I didn't actually write down on the when I made a label for it what month it came in, but it's just a silver embossing powder and it has a beautiful glitter in it. In retrospect, I wish that I had gone with a silver detailed embossing powder. It might have come out a little bit better in terms of showing up the detail, but no one can deny that the glitter sparkle is awesome there. And now I'm just taking the other snowflake stamp and I'm dipping it right into the peacock feathers and I'm just doing a couple more snowflakes in that peacock feathers, and that is all I'm going to do to the front of the card. Again, I wanted it to be mostly white with just tiny little pops of pow, and I go through and I do that to all of my card fronts. I'm a very hyper organized type of person, so I will generally, especially once the prototype project is complete, I will just sit there and I will power through doing all of a different stage of a card process, especially if I'm making multiples. I don't make a lot of multiples of stuff unless it's around Christmas time. So now I think we're pulling together the card. I'm going to use some wet glue, my Lawn Fawn glue, to put a very thin layer around on the front of the card, very close to the edge around those squares. And that's what I'm going to put those borders around, right onto that wet glue. Something I have learned specifically in the course of doing this project. This is not the first time I'm doing this. I cut that footage out. You do not want any wet glue anywhere near the plastic shaker pouches, because if you smear even the tiniest bit of glue, it's going to make it look dirty and it's just not going to come off. So I was originally gluing the the plastic down, and I decided to use tape instead. So I'm just kind of positioning, seeing where my little characters are going to fit in the background. Some of them I had to cut a little bit of the unicorn tail off because there was a little bit of overlap, and some of them just the way that the square worked there wasn't, and that's fine. So I'm just gluing her down. I also don't want any wet glue near my shaker bits. So I'm doing all of these first and setting them aside to dry so that the glue is nice and dry before I proceed. And now just placing the little snowman, and you can see the snowflakes in the background, just cutting that little tail tip off. So that's the best advice I can give you when working with those plastic pouches. Make sure that all of your glue is completely dry. I'm going to use score tape, 1/8 of an inch score tape. This is brand name score tape, and I'm going to go around very closely to the edge, the inner edge of all those squares on the back side, and that's what I'm going to use to hold the lip of those shaker pouches in, not glue. I can't stress this enough, not glue, please. Those shaker pouches are not cheap. I think they're $4 and you only get, I don't know, like 10 or 12 of them. They're completely worth it. Oh my goodness. Instead of fussing with, you know, sheets of acetate and stuff. And they're also thinner too. So I find I'm able to mail my cards with just a regular stamp when I use these versus a couple layers of foam tape using a traditional old-fashioned shaker card. Sometimes you have to pay the extra for the non-machinable mail stamp. Just popping those right in. They fit right in perfectly. Just pressing them down. Now I'm taping the back of the card itself because it's going to, after I put the shaker bits in it, it's going to get adhered to my background. And some time has passed in between, by the way, so all my glue is dry. I'm being very generous with the tape because I'm not using very small shaker bits, but I still didn't want anything sneaking out. And I used my little Cricut pick there, the weeding tool actually, to peel my release paper off of my tape. I can use my fingernails, but I sometimes push too hard and I get little paper cuts underneath my nail there. It just works out easier for me to use my pick if I can find it. Safer for me. So for my shaker bits, I'm actually going to be using something, and I don't know if you can buy it in stores or not, but if I can find it, I will definitely link it for you down below. It's called the Sulin Confetti Glitter. It's kind of like just a bunch of, I'm guessing it's scraps, plastic scraps, iridescent plastic scraps that are clear. And I picked up several bags at Walmart many years ago on clearance, which is why I don't know if you can still get it. But if I can find it, I will link it for you down below. And a little bit goes a long way, so I'm still going through the supply. I thought that it would be super fun and not detract from the beautiful colors that I have on there. Just something a little bit iridescent that picks up blues and greens and pinks. I'm just trimming off a little bit of extra because I didn't line it up all that perfectly, but it works fine still. And now the only thing left to do really is to attach my card to a bit of matting. I'm going to mat it on more of that pretty seafoam teal green, just for a little bit more color. I love matting cards. I love it. That little pop of color in the background. Love it. And of course it matches the border there. It pulls everything together. It pulls the whole look. And then the only thing left to do at that point is to get it mounted to my card base. And I'm using just very inexpensive double-sided tape from Joann's from Ms. Sparkle & Company for that. And there you go. There is the Christmas Magic set from Avery Elle and my little 2-pocket shaker cards. I hope that you have enjoyed, and until next week when I have another video. Thank you very much. Bye.